I'd like to frame this in how can we do this in the workplace? There's two ways to do that. There's not only increasing diversity, right? So just getting people in the door, but also creating an inclusive environment. So once they're there, there isn't turnover. Their voices feel heard and valued, and they're creating impact. And so I'd love to start off with a conversation about hiring practices. Okay. So especially in smaller startups, there's a tendency to recruit within one's network. It's very high. So what specific steps can companies do to break this trend, and where should we be going to recruit and through which resources? And I'd love actually to hear a little bit from you, Kobe, on this first because of your work at Valence.
Framed it really well. Part of the issue is that people naturally recruit from their pre-existing networks. So lots of times the pre-existing networks mirror themselves in terms of the way they look and just the way they grew up, socioeconomic status. And it really dawned on me there was an issue around for those individuals who'd want to tap into other networks, especially diverse networks, they needed to get access to them. And this was illuminated a couple years ago when at Upfront, we created an inclusion clause in our term sheets, really encouraging our portfolio company CEOs, all of the Rooney Rule, to try to spend more time searching for underrepresented minorities and candidates as they're hiring senior level positions. So I reflected upon this position we put our portfolio companies into, and then started listening to our portfolio companies coming to me many times saying, hey, we're about to hire a VP of sales, a CMO. You're Black, you probably know every Black person out there. Why don't you make some introductions? And I'm like, contrary to popular belief, we all don't know one another. But then I realized it'd be really interesting. What if we did? What if there was a central place by which Black talent could connect, find one another, and build with one another? Fast forward to where we are right now, we have roughly 7,600 Black professionals strong on the platform across different parts of the country. And it's, in my opinion, our opinion, that it all takes a centralized platform where we can try to learn from one another, deconstruct the professional advancement pathways, start building true structured insights around what it takes to achieve key milestones, especially dependent on background and just overall history in terms of how are you been in your life, and then allow us through peer bonding to grow together and help one another. So that's really what we're trying to accomplish with Valence, and just create bridges with those entities, those people, like you said before, startups that may not have that network. Take that excuse off the table where it's like, I have no idea where to find all Black talent. You can just go to Valence, and we're still growing, still the beginnings, but it's our aspiration that we take that issue off the table.
And Una, how have you thought about this in your time at Google and Snap? Where, in addition to Valence, have you been finding this before Valence existed?
There are some really basic foundational things that companies need to do, and those things are different depending on the size of the company. Obviously, I want to mention a few of those, but then I really want to tell you a story. Because, yes, I'll be talking about data. Yes, you have to fundamentally ensure that your hiring and recruiting process are not doing what virtually all of them do, which is prioritize speed over diversity. DEI, diversity, equity, and inclusion, will always lose out to speed. So you need to actually put some processes in place to ensure that you get a more diverse candidate slate, known as the Rooney Rule. You need to come up with the version that is going to work for your company. You need to get, as I was saying, the data in place, a diversity data dashboard that is going to give exec level breakdown so that people have more granularity. Everything's hidden in the aggregate. When you just have these aggregate numbers, that's not going to get you anywhere if you want to specifically deal with hiring issues. But one of the things you also have to step back and do is understand that hiring is just part of the sum. It's hiring is made up of what are you doing to keep your diverse talent where you are, e.g. how inclusive is your culture. One proxy for measuring that is data around promos. Which groups are getting promos, i.e. they're valued, which groups are not. Hiring plus promo minus attrition equals representation. People too often just focus on the hiring, but what you're doing there, whilst it is critical and you must do that, if you're only focusing on the hiring, no, it's this thing of having to walk and chew gum at the same time. It can be very draining. But if you're only focused on the hiring, it's like filling up the bath with the plug out. You will not actually ever increase your overall representation. Fundamentally, what you got to understand is that having a more diverse workforce is going to benefit you. It's going to lead to greater creative excellence. And if you don't understand that, if you think you're doing it to tick a box or to be nice to those poor underrepresented groups who just can't get into your company, then you are wildly wrong. And you will not benefit from this. So this example goes back to when I was Chief Diversity Officer at Channel 4. What the head of Film 4 told me, I heard what happened when she was looking to have a Black film director, right? Channel 4 had never invested in a Black film director. And she was like, this is terrible. We must do something. She told her, team, go out and find me someone we could invest in as a Black film director. There must be someone. Like, go and find them. They come back and they were like, oh no, we can't. You know how it is. You just can't find the diverse talent. Kobe, how often do you hear that? What you have to understand, the answer is never that talent isn't there. The answer is that you haven't found it. The point is that she told her team, well, then go out again, go out again and look. And they said, we can't find anyone of the caliber. You've heard that before. We can't find anyone of the caliber that Channel 4 would usually invest in. And so what she said was, well, then go and look in an adjacent talent pool. Because either you're looking in the wrong place or you're asking for the wrong qualifications. It can't be that they're not there. She found someone, she invested in him long-term, 3 films over 5 years, and his 3rd film won the Oscar for Best Film, Steve McQueen, 12 Years a Slave, right? People don't understand. Do you realize, Channel 4, money couldn't buy the publicity that Channel 4 and the brand enhancement that Channel 4 got from that. And it came essentially out of a DEI scheme. It came out of a white woman saying, this will not stand. This is not acceptable. Go back and look again, look harder, look further, look elsewhere. And if even then you can't do it, then be innovative. But at the end of the day, if you don't have a mental shift that this is not a favor you are doing for something else, this is an investment to make sure your business has a long-term future.
The things that both of you mentioned are actually very tangible, right? Okay, so where is the talent? There are networks being created like Valence. And then also when you're thinking about it, speed. Don't sacrifice quality of candidate and also diversity of candidate just because, okay, we need to get someone in there right now. So I think those are some really actionable things that hiring managers can take away. So let's say I've got a candidate pool of people that I'm excited about. There's diversity, but I don't have a lot of people that look like that in my company. And so when these people come into the interview, they're going to be looking around and saying, okay, how am I going to be successful here? There's no one that looks like me here. So how do you deal with that for companies that don't necessarily have that diversity in place yet?
One thing that we're looking at, because you've got to be careful also that you're not doing the classic thing, which is you've got one woman engineer. So now on top of her job, she's got to spend 50% extra being on every interview panel because there are no other diverse people there. There are other ways that you can give people the chance to interview the company. So we've started, for example, at Snap, I was interviewed by the ERGs. So our Black ERG leads, they were asking me, and also it was amazing for me to see who they were. And it also gives candidates the opportunity to ask things more informally, because then you can take it out of hey, what's your coding like? Hey, did you get that question right? And it's more an opportunity for people to have an interview really about the culture of the company. And more, especially with Gen Z, it's the culture fit. I do think bringing in other parts of the company, especially ERGs, to help with that process is a really helpful thing to do from both sides.
I think from the actual interviewer's perspective, you got to take a step back and, as best as possible, strip your unconscious biases and look within yourself with regards to how are you looking at applicants that come from backgrounds that are not like yours. Because on the flip side, many candidates, us being Black, it's not new to us to be one of the only faces in the room that looks like that. So we're really trying to tease out like, is this a place do I want to work with? Are these just good people? And if you, during the interview process, come off as like a bad person, you're biased, you can see microaggressions that occur at some point in the process. You can see the way other people look at you when you're walking in and out of the office. We see that stuff.